squeaking is crazy.
It's really. Can you imagine, like, basketball games?
Oh my gosh, right? Yeah.
I didn't. Sure. Hey everyone, can you hear me? We're going to get started here in just a couple more minutes. We have a few people coming on in. We just want to make sure that we've got as many people here in person as possible, and then Senator Simmons will come out and get us started. Thanks so much for coming this afternoon.
Hi,
How are you?
Good. I was told you already had a copy of this that you read already, and I'm here to collect a signature for it. And if you need, I can just leave you this and pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
We are doing live stream.
Okay. How's that volume? Good? Great. Welcome everybody. My name is Heather Sanger. I'm Chief of Staff for Senator Mike Simmons. He's jumping to my left. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for a town hall. Just a few housekeeping things. First, want to let you know where you can reach our office and find us. The district office is located at 1040 West Bryn Mawr. It's right at the corner of Bryn Mawr and Sheridan. And there's contact information on the collateral at the desk there. You're welcome to take a printed handout that kind of lays out this evening's agenda. There's also a QR code if you prefer to follow along on your phone, help us save some paper. But you can reach out to our office about any state-related issue. For the agenda this evening, just a quick recap. The Senator's going to talk about the impact of ICE in our communities, some updates about what's been going on in the state legislature. And as a reminder, I just want to share, since we are all still really vigilant about ICE being in our communities, I want to remind you all that if you ever see ICE in the community, if they interact with you or if you're concerned about your neighbors, please call the ICE hotline, which is 855-435-7693. It is the best way to coordinate all resources and keeping our neighbors safe. The second issue that the Senator will be going over today, a really important one, as recent changes have been implemented this month, is the SNAP program. So this is the food assistance program. There's been a lot of changes. There are a lot of things that we are doing to mitigate those changes, but it's a big priority, and we really need the community to know about it. And then overall, the Senator is going to talk about his spring legislation. It's about 51 bills. So he's not going to talk about every single one individually, but we've kind of broken them into topic sections, which is also in the handout. And then we will be doing a Q&A afterwards. We will do our best to incorporate the questions that were submitted online in advance. I think a lot of those will be covered in his topics as he's providing updates. And then we'll just take questions from you all kind of organically. I also just want to share that Senator Simmons has an event obligation immediately after this one at 6:30. So he's gonna pop out of here a couple of minutes before then. So we apologize, we don't have as much time as we normally do, but he's a busy person these days. So we appreciate you coming. If you don't get a chance to interact or ask your question, please, again, just reach out to our office and we'll make sure that we are in touch. Without any further ado, I'll hand it over.
Thank you so much, Heather. Would everybody please give a round of applause to Heather, Connor, Jackie, and Stuart, my staff. This whole office operates because of staff. I'm just a vehicle for all the good service for our communities. My name is Mike Simmons. I serve as your state senator representing the far north side, neighborhoods of Uptown, Edgewater, Rogers Park, Wrigleyville, North Center, Lincoln Square, and West Ridge. And our district office is at 1040 West Brightmar. For those of you who need help, need services, have neighbors that need help, 1040 West Brightmar, and the handouts that you got in the back, if you should have seen a little pink booklet, that is our legislative recap, but it has all of our office info. I really want folks to know how to reach me and our staff if you need help. I think constituent services are really one of the most important things that your local officials are doing right now. Specifically, you know, we're here to talk about SNAP cuts tonight. We'll get that in a second, but if you've got neighbors who are hungry or who don't have enough food, send them to our office because we can make sure that they're enrolled in SNAP. We can make sure that they're connected to local food pantries. We can make sure that they, my district office actually has non-perishable food items. We have toiletries, we have diapers, we have Pampers. We have all of these things that are free for you to just come and take. We don't ask any questions. You don't have to fill out a form. You don't have to need. So make sure you let folks know that too, because a lot of people right now are really struggling, and we want people to at least be able to go to bed not hungry and with a warm apartment. Also, healthcare. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. If you all have any neighbors or yourselves that don't have healthcare or not getting the healthcare you need, come talk to us. Come to our office because we will make sure to find you care. Right? We'll connect you with a clinic, we'll connect you with a federally qualified health clinic, we'll get you enrolled in Medicaid. I will do whatever it takes to make sure that my constituents have health care, especially in this climate. So just a couple points there. We are, before we talk about the spring legislative agenda, I wanted to talk a little bit about these new SNAP work requirements. So you probably all have read about this. I'm not happy with any of this. I think that this is disastrous public policy, but it's what's been handed down from the federal government. So you all probably know that last year in July, the federal Congress and President Trump imposed new work requirements for SNAP and Medicaid recipients. Those requirements went into effect February 1st. That was just last week. If you are currently enrolled in SNAP or know anybody who's enrolled in SNAP, you can wait until your current enrollment period is over to meet these new work requirements. Specifically, the requirements are that those are the work, you have to work at least 80 hours per month. Self-initiated community service counts as unpaid work. Participating in complying with qualified work programs such as the Work Innovation Opportunity Act. There are several exceptions that are in place, notably for those that are age 17 or younger, 65 and older. If you're experiencing a physical or mental health condition that limits your ability to work, if you're expecting a child, if you live in a staff household with a child that is under 18, those are just a few of the categories. If you don't follow those categories, and you are on SNAP, you likely are required to meet work requirements. This is where if you are in that category, I want you to really have a relationship with my office because we'll do everything we can to make sure that no one gets kicked off SNAP. As a state legislator, it actually is my job to oversee the agencies of the state government that administer SNAP and all these other programs. So we have a lot of leverage in terms of making sure that our constituents don't get kicked off these programs, making sure that we do everything we can to make sure you stay enrolled. So keep that in mind as the federal government rolls out these new requirements. And the other thing too is abe.illinois.gov is the website where you would check your enrollment, make sure your SNAP eligibility is extended if it needs to be. We have a phone number too for that. It's on our handout. But the main takeaway there is to make sure you stay connected with our office in these difficult times. If you do not meet SNAP work requirements, you can receive a maximum of 3 months worth of benefits over a fixed 3-year period. So that obviously is the part that is disastrous. My preference would be if people are hungry or they're not even making enough money to buy food, they should get SNAP. And we're going to continue to fight to do everything we can at the state level to counteract the new federal requirements that are in place. And the same goes for Medicaid. As you probably know, Medicaid work requirements were also put into effect. Those won't actually take effect until January 2027. So we have some time. Hopefully Congress will reverse that. I would love to see that. I would love to see the courts throw this out. And unfortunately, that is a law that was passed last year. I want to say again, I don't care what the federal government does, as long as any of my constituents need health care, need Medicaid, or need SNAP, I and my staff will make sure you get it. With that, why don't we move into the spring legislative agenda? How many of you are at one of the town halls for the first time by show of hands? Okay, that's a good lot of you. So let me just do a quick sort of minute or 2-minute recap of who I am and my background. So first of all, I'm a longtime resident of Uptown. I actually lived right at 800 block in West Windsor for the last 5 years. My partner and I just moved to Rogers Park, but I was in this area for 15 years. I was on a local school council, Brenneman Elementary School. I also have rented in Uptown for all the years that I lived here, and I also was here when I was a kid. So I have long ties in the community. My dad was a Lakeview business owner in Lakeview. My mom was a salon owner in Rogers Park, so very, very deep roots around here. I grew up in Lincoln Square in scattered site public housing. Went to 3 different elementary schools in the area, including Butler Elementary, St. Thomas, Canterbury. So really deep ties here. And it really is quite a joy to represent this area in the state senate. There's, as you know, a lot of diversity in our community. There's a lot of need. And there are a lot of communities that just want to live peacefully and have enough to eat and have the lights on and meet basic needs. And I am committed to, have been fighting for that for the last 5 years in the state senate and will continue to. That pink handout that you saw in the back has a recap of my legislative updates. So think of it as a report card for your state senator. I encourage you to take one of those and put it on your refrigerator because you may need to call me in the week to get services. I want to make sure you know exactly how to get to me. But it also just has a good recap of bills that I've helped to fight for, constituent services that you can reach out to us for, etc. Can someone please just hold up a copy of the pink booklet back there? All right, and you can even pass them out too if you like. Okay, so this spring, the job of the state senator is to pass laws that affect any number of different issues that affect our community. So public safety, healthcare, housing, transportation and transit, food security, number of areas that are really important. In the state senate, I chair the public health committee. I'm the vice chair of the behavioral mental health committee. I serve on the transportation committee, the labor committee, and the appropriations committee for healthcare and human services. So it's a pretty good set of committees for the kind of things that our neighborhoods need up here. We have a lot of people that really need affordable health care, really need decent affordable housing. Transit is a really big blessing that our community has. We're blessed to have so many good public transit amenities. I've tried to fight to keep them and expand them, and we've been able to do that. So let me talk a little bit about this spring. So as Heather said earlier, I have filed, I should say we, it's never just me. Whenever I do, there's a smart staff behind me and community members that have helped us. We have filed 51 pieces of legislation for the spring session so far. That, I think, is a record. I've passed, just so you understand the scale of that, I've passed 50 bills the entire time I've been in the state senate. So we just filed 50 bills for the next 3 months for the spring session. And the reason for that is not just to file bills for the sake of it, but because people have asked us to take action on certain issues. I've got a lot of ideas that come from constituents. In fact, half of the 50 bills I've passed in the last 5 years came directly from rooms like this. It's been constituents who pulled me aside and talked to me about a problem or a systemic issue they're trying to navigate, and we take action. We use the power that we've been trusted to hold to make life better for people. That really is what my team and I are all about. So ICE right now is the elephant in the room. You know, I don't have to relive for you the trauma that all of our communities have experienced from ICE over the last several months. Operation Midway Blitz, as it's formerly known, sent masked, unidentified federal agents into our neighborhoods, places such as Uptown Edgewater and Rogers Park, where people were abducted, people were beaten, people were taken, violating their constitutional rights with no due process, and that is absolutely reprehensible. I myself, as state senator, was out looking out for our constituents, looking out for our small business owners, looking out for our immigrant communities, making sure that ICE stayed out of our neighborhoods, and that was a terrible experience that I hope I and you do not have to relive. I'm so proud that in the state senate in November, I helped to pass what's known as the Bivens Act, which gives us the right to sue federal ICE agents if they violate our constitutional rights. So the thinking is that if ICE agents come in here and just start abducting and grabbing people, they'll think twice now that they know that a civil lawsuit can be brought against them. So really straightforward piece of legislation. I was proud to help get that over the finish line. That legislation also prohibits ICE from doing any enforcement activities within 1,000 feet or basically 2 city blocks of a courtroom. Why? Because we had a lot of our immigrants and asylum seekers in our community. My dad was an asylum seeker from Ethiopia. Came to this community literally 2 years before I was born. Those asylum seekers are going back and forth to court, following the law, trying to do everything they need to do to become American citizens. We don't want ICE agents coming around those court facilities and intimidating those folks. I'm glad that we did that. That legislation also keeps them away from our daycare centers. We saw ICE taking a mom away from a daycare center in North Center, which just is a mile away from here. Back in October, people were outraged at this. I'm sure you saw the news coverage of it. And that legislation also prohibits, it requires that hospitals and health clinics have procedures for if ICE tries to come into their facilities. We don't want ICE in our hospitals, we don't want them in our clinics. People are in hospitals and clinics to treat conditions, to get preventative health care, and to get life-saving treatment, not to have to deal with a masked bully who's trying to make a political point. So I'm glad that we passed that bill. We need to do a lot more on this. I'm glad that we passed the Bivens Act. But this spring, I brought forward a number of bills that would further counter ICE. Specifically, I have grave concerns about the role of the state police and their involvement with Broadway Detention Center. If I had my druthers, the state police would not be at the Broadway Detention Facility or doing any enforcement activities at all, because it is the public policy of Illinois that local law enforcement are not supposed to be cooperating with ICE. We passed legislation 4 years ago to make that a reality. And so I don't see a role for the state police there. A number of our neighbors were attacked and brutalized and roughed up at Broadway Detention Center. I have reached out to the governor's office to make it clear I don't think that is the right way to go, and have serious concerns with what I've heard and seen, and really don't want to see it anymore. I myself went to Broadway Detention Center. I had a constituent who was actually abducted from Home Depot, and they just left his car sitting outside of the Home Depot. And I just looked at this and was like, can we at least try to get the car back to the family, or let the family know what has happened to this man? And so I went there, and they wouldn't even let me in the facility. They literally handed me the key. Somebody came out in the mask and just literally handed me a key and shut the door. So that's where we are right now with this. We got to go a lot further than where we are. And then one other bill I'd like to talk about on ICE. I have introduced legislation that would create a $50 million fund to stabilize communities that have been traumatized by the ICE raids. And so the justification for bringing this forward is that a lot of our small business have been destabilized by the presence of ICE. We have immigrant business owners in places like West Rogers Park and Uptown that are afraid to operate their storefronts because they don't know who might show up. And I think that's a disgrace. And so I think that we need to be doing everything we can to help those business owners stabilize and continue to operate their businesses. And I think that this is legislation that is right on time. We did something similar 2 years ago. We created a small business restoration grant with our local chambers of commerce, where in my Senate district, we created $10,000 grants for small businesses that were affected by the pandemic. So what I'm looking to do is essentially that again for the whole state, for businesses, small business, mom and pop business that were affected by the ICE raids. And a lot of those businesses are still shuttered and are not open because they're afraid it's just not safe for them to go back into their business, and that breaks my heart. I've also brought forth another bill that would create a $10 million fund for community-based organizations that did the Lord's work during the Operation Midway Blitz, the rapid response networks. I don't even want you to do a show of hands on that. But we had rapid response networks that just sort of organically were created from our neighbors who are not political, not community organizers, but just don't want roving bands of thugs rolling through our neighborhoods, whipping up on people. It's just no human society would want to live with that. And I was just really proud that so many of our neighbors are now doing rapid response, patrolling our streets, making sure our kids get to school safely. I participated in a lot of those patrols. And what I'd like to do with this fund is to create funding for those rapid response networks to become permanent. So my thinking is people are doing a lot of this out of their volunteer time. People are going to burn out, people are going to get tired, people are going to have to go back to work. Let's keep these infrastructures in place. Let's reward the people that are looking after our neighbors, and do other things that we need to do in our communities. So those are two priorities under countering ICE in our community that I wanted to make you aware of. Another area where I've got a lot of bills this session is an area of the SNAP and Medicaid requirements. So, you know, I have brought forth bills that would help us to remove these work requirements for foster care youth, for veterans, for those that are unhoused, and several other populations. Again, I think we should do away with the work requirements altogether. I think that they're bad public policy, they're violent. In fact, because a lot of my constituents that are not working want to work. I don't believe that people don't want to work. I think our economy and our systems fail people and don't create work for people to be able to make a living. The minimum wage in our country hasn't been raised in 20 years, and in Illinois, it can be raised a lot higher for people to really be able to pay for rent in places like Uptown and be able to put groceries on their tables. And I know that because that is literally my own lived experience. And so I want people to be able to not have these kind of onerous requirements hoisted upon them. Certainly people who are the most vulnerable people in our society, like foster care youth, single moms, etc. And that bill is SB 3883, SB 3882. We've also got legislation that would remove co-payments for prescription medications for Medicaid recipients. This is an area I've been really active in the last 5 years. Healthcare has been a really big area. I've passed no less than 10 bills that make it easier for people to access healthcare. I passed a bill last year that erases medical debt for households that have medical debt that exceeds 5% of their household income. That became law in 2024, and to date, 357,000 households have had their medical debt erased as a result of my legislation. I've also passed legislation to remove co-pays for people that are struggling with addiction in our community. We know that mental health is a big crisis, particularly in places like Uptown and Edgewater. Addiction is a really passionate area for me because people don't advocate for people who are struggling with addiction the way they should. And so I've brought forth legislation that removes co-pays for people that are trying to get treatment for liver disease and other conditions that are often brought about from untreated underlying conditions and addiction. So that is, those are a few of the priorities that I have in the SNAP and Medicaid compartment. Just a quick thing I want to tell you is that if I had my druthers, we would have universal health care. I believe in Medicare for all. I have brought forth legislation the last few years that would expand Medicaid eligibility. The current federal cutoff is 133% of the federal poverty level. What happens is that you have people that make too much money for Medicaid, but make too little to buy onto the insurance exchanges. And so they are small business owners, they are gig workers. It was my mother at one point, this is a salon owner in Rogers Park, and too many others. And so I'm going to keep pushing that legislation at the state level because I will not rest until everybody has access to dignified, affordable health care. It is a basic human right. We've got to fight for it. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. So this is another area that I'm really focused on this spring session. A number of constituents, droves of constituents have come to my district office anxious and afraid of what AI is doing to our privacy. And specifically, I've got legislation that would, SB 3571, we just finished filing the bill, so I don't have the numbers memorized. But SB 3571 would basically stop AI price fixing and job replacement. I'm really nervous about automation and what that can mean for people's jobs. And so what I'm trying to do is to create infrastructure at the state level that would anticipate threats to jobs that people could lose as a result of AI and have regulatory frameworks in place to mitigate that at all costs. Specifically, this bill would provide that whenever there's a mass layoff or closing, employers must disclose any job cuts due to replacement or automation by AI. It would also require that the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity issue public reports disclosing those that have done so. So I think the right time for us to really come out swinging on AI. As your state senator, it's an area I'm very much focused on and will continue to be an active fighter on this. I also have Senate Bill 3761, which creates the Data Center Parity Act. Just to try to simplify what's going on, you have supply and demand of energy. We all use energy every day. We go home and turn on lights, we plug things to the walls. How many of you have had energy bills go up 1 month or 1 year and it pissed you off? Okay, so a lot of our energy prices are going up because there are these big, massive data centers that use AI that store data, ChatGPT, Facebook, Meta, companies like that. And the problem with it is that they are sucking so much energy without an increase in supply that's driving up our monthly energy prices. The same is happening with water from these AI data centers. So Senate Bill 3761 would simply require that AI data centers are transparent with how much they're pulling from the grid, and then that legislation would require them to put more money foot more of the bill of what they're demanding, so that the cost is not passed on to consumers like us. That's simply what the bill does. I have bigger concerns about AI. I think that we either need an oversight bureau at the state or federal level to really rein in some of the abuses of AI. I think AI can do a lot of good for our communities. It can solve a lot of problems. Where I have to draw the line is I don't want AI determining rent prices for people that live in places like Uptown and Rogers Park, and that's been happening in a lot of our rental market. I don't want AI making healthcare decisions in hospitals about who gets life-saving specialty treatments and who doesn't. Not interested in that. Count on me to fight for folks in our neighborhoods who need to have access to healthcare, need to have access to affordable housing. Moving on to education. I am a big proponent of education. I would not be here if things didn't work out for me to get Pell Grants to go to college and my mother was able to go to Truman Community College while she ran a salon when I was a teenager. They had free childcare on site at the time. She was able to have my sister be in childcare while she got her associate's degree. That's my vision for what we should be doing for our state. And so I brought forward Senate Bill 3778, which would establish a free community college for all Illinois residents in our state by implementing what's known as the market tax. It's a really obscure way of paying for it that comes from a set of proposals that came from the Illinois Revenue Alliance, where we're closing corporate loopholes and insisting that we tax billionaires and have fair taxation in our state so that we can pay for Medicaid and pay for SNAP and stop having these austerity discussions that politicians have been having for a long time, and it's not helping us build more affordable housing, it's not helping us get people health care, it's not helping us to keep people fed. So, thank you. So SB 3778, free community colleges for all, is not a radical idea. I really believe that public education is a public right. And just literally what I have been able to take advantage of in my own lifetime. As someone who grew up in public housing, son of a salon owner, I want everybody to have that. I want people in our community to be able to go to community colleges for free. I also would draw for Senate Bill 3028 that would basically ban standardized testing in K-12 schools. This is an ambitious piece of legislation. And I've got a lot of parents in the 7th district who have talked to me over the years about how unfair they think access to college is for kids in our neighborhoods. That they're forced to put their kids through standardized tests where the parents have to pay obscene fees for them to go through practice sessions and take a whole 3 or 4 month course to figure out how to answer a multiple choice exam the right way. I don't think that that's fair for economic mobility or for social progress, and so I'm fighting to at least imagine a debate around how we look for proficiencies in our young people. And I don't think a multiple choice test that is a for-profit way of testing our students is the right way to go. And then Senate Bill 3361 expands the Jed Hawkins Act to protect hairstyles related to religious hairstyles in public schools from being outlawed. Do any of you remember the Jed Hawkins Act that we passed a few years ago? The 4-year-old kid went to school with his mother braided his hair and he was suspended. I read about it. This was my first year in the Senate in 2021. I introduced a law and named it after him. I called the mother into my office. We talked about what happened to her son. And we fought and fought and fought, and we passed a piece of legislation that bans hair discrimination against Black youth in K-12 schools in Illinois. That was a really meaningful accomplishment. We we named the legislation after the child. We had Governor Pritzker come to Uptown and sign the bill. He signed it at Uplift High School. And this is part 2 of that. We have a lot of our neighbors, particularly in the Jewish community, that have come to my office that want young people to be able to go to school with facial hair in ways that are consistent with their religious heritage, and I support them. I think that's the right thing to do. I'm a big supporter of bodily autonomy. Let us wear our hair how we want. Let us access healthcare how we want. I am an LGBTQ state senator, the first, by the way, in Illinois history. I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that people can just be themselves. It's so straightforward. I know I'm running through a lot here. We have a lot of bills this session. Let's talk about childcare and universal basic income. I've brought forth Senate Bill 3884, which would, it's a universal childcare piece of legislation. The goal is to ensure that people don't pay any more than 7% of their family income towards childcare. And that's just a baseline. I would like that to be 0%. I believe in that. That's my vision. I will fight for that for the rest of my time in office until we get there. And this would direct the development of a child care assistance program that includes child care subsidies and limits co-payments to be no more than 7% of a family's income by 2030. This would also be funded by progressive revenue ideas, market taxes, the specific one that we're looking at. We've got several other ideas for how we can tax billionaires, how we can close offshore tax havens so that we can pay for some of these programs, and we just need political will, I think, to get there, and that is what I'm doing. Senate Bill 2811 establishes a guaranteed income pilot to provide 2 years of 500 monthly cash payments to low and moderate income families in Illinois. People are really feeling the squeeze in our economy right now. People are struggling. I grew up watching my mom make really hard decisions between paying her rent to keep her salon open in Rogers Park or having health care for us. And in our instance, we have to go without health care. I don't want the next generation to have to make those sort of choices, or parents that have to make those choices. Another bill I wanted to mention is transportation has been a really big priority for me. I fought really hard in the fall to pass the public transit legislation, $1.5 billion that's going to fund more frequent services for our buses and trains. We have so much transit in the area, we want to keep it. I was proud to make that pass, get that done. I brought forward another bill that would create a state grid for buses so that people can use buses to get across the state, particularly a lot of our day laborers and people who are working 2 and 3 jobs who need to be able to use public transit and sometimes work 2 hours away. This is a way to get the Department of Transportation less focused on highways and cars and more focused on public transit. I think that we need to do that for people that live here, but we also need to do it for our planet, because transit is the 2nd largest source of carbon emissions in our world. So we have to attack this issue at scale. Let's talk about just LGBTQ rights. Some of you may have noted in 2023, I brought forth legislation to make Illinois a sanctuary state for trans families. So you can come to Illinois, particularly if you're coming from a state where all of a sudden gender-affirming care is no longer allowed, or parents may be prosecuted for letting the kids get health care. I brought forth legislation that prohibits Illinois from cooperating with authorities from other states who are trying to enforce bogus laws that I don't agree with. I think it was the right thing to do. I will say I had to elbow a lot of my colleagues to support that bill. Folks were not, even some Democrats were not interested in taking a vote on it at the time, and I showed out. I went off on my colleagues. I said, don't take another picture with me at a pride parade if you won't stand up for LGBTQ rights. That is how I operate in this role, and I'm really proud to have been so effective using that approach when we need to. But we need to go further. Senate Bill 3481 would prohibit a hospital or healthcare professional from disclosing or threatening to disclose info about gender-affirming care for a minor with any person, entity, or agency. This is legislation that, again, comes from stakeholders. It's not just little old me sitting in an ivory tower. We have a really robust co-governing model where we have 9 people's legislative councils made up of folks like you in this room who help us write bills, help us fight for bills. And this particular one came from a mental health organization in our district that is concerned about this happening to folks that are receiving gender-affirming care. Another bill that I would like to talk about, I'm trying to not read you every single last one, because you can read some of these. I don't want to just be talking at you. Mental health is a really big priority for me. Senate Bill 3482 would establish the Mental Health Council to be organized by the Board of Higher Education and make recommendations regarding youth mental health. Youth mental health has been a big area I've been active on the last several years. I passed legislation 2 years ago that creates a statewide youth mental health council where young people across the state are helping us push forward mental health parity in Illinois. It's been one of my favorite parts of the time I've been in the state senate, is working with young kids all across the state who appreciate that we finally are talking openly about mental health in the way that my millennial generation did not get growing up. So we're going to fight for that. We also passed the bill 2 years ago that requires K-12 schools to let kiddos know how and where they can access mental health resources, so they're not trying to figure this stuff out in the dark, the way my generation did. And really, really proud to be fighting for that. I'm going to go through a couple of more here that I'd like to make you aware of. You know, some of you probably heard about what's going on with Weiss Hospital. I'm really disappointed that the current CEO of Weiss Hospital has been a very awful partner with the communities in terms of working to restore the hospital, in terms of getting it fixed so that the federal government reverses the shutdown. Myself and Alderwoman Angela Clay and our state rep and other elected officials are trying to help to get the hospital to a place where it can reopen. Specifically, I have legislation, though, that would require that the Department of Public Health notify elected officials when a sacred hospital is in danger of closing. That did not happen here. What they did is they told everybody at the last minute that the federal government, CMS, found them to be in a state where they could not provide health care, and tried to fix this at the last minute. I think that the CEO of Weiss Hospital is trying to run it into the ground so that they can sell the building. I've been outspoken about that. We've protested him. Literally going into his office and pushing so that our neighborhood has access to SafeNet healthcare. In the meantime, my staff and I have worked to make sure that our surrounding hospitals, such as Thoric, such as Advocate, such as Swedish Covenant, have additional state resources to make up for the increased demand that they're seeing from people who currently are displaced from Weiss Hospital. So that's one thing that we're doing there amongst many others. And then finally, would like to talk about housing. That's a really important issue in our area. In a spring veto session, I was able to pass legislation that bans junk fees on renters. There are so many folks in our neighborhoods that are renting, and you think you're signing a lease for a particular monthly rent, and then they hit you with all kinds of fees afterwards. You get a fee if you call maintenance to report a safety issue. You get hit with a fee if you need to do a credit check, or these other mundane things that I just think we should be more upfront about that upfront, so that renters are not moving into a unit that they can't afford to stay in. I'm proud to pass Senate Bill 3564, waiting on the House to concur so that the governor can consider that legislation. We've also got legislation that would do several things, and you'll find it on page 10. Specifically, Senate Bill 3477 creates a 10-month eviction moratorium for renter households that have been unable to work due to federal immigration enforcement activities. You really have a disruption right now where there are families where one breadwinner was abducted and is in detention right now, and there's a mom or dad or even older teenagers who are trying to take care of their families. And I'm somebody that knows what that's like because of where I grew up, and I don't want people to have to suffer like that. And so I think that we need to take a more systemic approach at the state level to help people that have been destabilized and are in economic pain right now as a result of the immigration enforcement activities that we saw in the fall. And then finally, we've got a couple of other pieces of legislation in here that are more technical, but I'm going to stop there. I think, Heather, are there any other big blockbusters that I should mention that I have not mentioned so far? Try not to just like read 51 bills one after the other.
Yeah.
I think those are some of the big ones.
Yeah, those are really the
We
big
got
ones.
ICE, we got housing, we got healthcare, we got education, we got transit, we got universal basic income.
Yeah, I think just in the housing space, there's really, the city of Chicago doesn't seem to have as much funds to invest in. Immediate services, the housing situation, so one of the questions is, do you have the information you need to help address affordable housing, transitional housing needs, shelter needs, and...
Oh, are these questions from the audience? Okay, so before we go there, I think it's fair to say I've given you a good overview of most of the bills for this session. If you have any questions about any of the bills that you see in our list here, just pull me aside or ask during the Q&A. Always call my office. I'm happy to sit down and meet with you and do a Zoom if you want to get more into the weeds or plunge into the details on this stuff. If you've got ideas, it's never too late. Don't ever let a state legislator tell you it's too late to introduce the bills. We can get a vehicle, we can put any idea forward in the meantime, especially if we got constituents that are really supportive. The other thing I wanted to say too is, please do write to my office. I often take letters I get from constituents and read them in committee meetings and when I'm negotiating with my colleagues, and those are really powerful. People really listen to that. So I read letters from you all the time. I really appreciate that part of the job, probably more than a lot of the other parts. Is direct representation of things that people in the district are dealing with. So, all right, that concludes the legislative overview. Couple of things before we go to questions. For those who want to help our communities that have been affected by the ICE raids, make sure that you are throwing down with One Northside, ICER, Illinois Coalition of Immigrant and Refugee Rights, ICER.org, and then Protect Rogers Park. It's not just in Rogers Park, they're focused on a pretty broad area of the North Lakefront. Those are three groups that we would be happy to connect you with if you're not already tapped in. And with that, why don't we take some questions from the folks in the room, and then we'll go to the questions that people submitted digitally. So, all right. Short. Okay. Try to use your outside voice.
Yeah. The year 2033, the Social Security Trust Fund is going to run out. Not being addressed anywhere. The amount of people paying into it, new generation, paying into it, is going to be under what us baby boomers with a large population. Not anywhere. State level, city level, nowhere. Year 2050, go to Google. 2033, Social Security Trust Fund. When you find out everybody gets cut 23% right now, 2024, that's going to affect us here in Illinois. So federal government, can we do something? Yeah. Because it's going to affect us, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, advocacy. I mean, it's Social Security and Medicare are in the course of running out by 2035, and what that means specifically is that 75% funded and just sort of decreasing every few years after that. What that means is our neighbors who, I was talking to an LGBTQ veteran on Sunday in Edgewater who his cost of living increase right now is $56 a month, and that right there is not enough for the real expenses. So just imagine it running out and getting worse. This is where I think that my generation feels like we need bigger, imaginative approaches to these sorts of issues where we can find, and I serve at the state level, but I've been outspoken about what the federal government can do to better support us. I think that we should decrease the Department of Defense budget so that we can pay for some of these human services programs that I think are entitlements. I think that people should have a right to, I think our seniors should have a right to retirement security. I think that people should have a right to health care. People should have a right to basic education. And so, to pay for it, my generation, I'm on the Senate Progressive Caucus, we do the homework. We don't just come in with slogans. Like, we had no less than 24 revenue bills that we drafted last session that helped us to pay for increases in mental health services, helped us to fund safety net hospitals, and helped us to stabilize a $53 billion state budget without cuts and without raising taxes. That's how my generation, folks are just now kind of being elected to office. It's a whole different way of doing this work. And the generation before us didn't really do that. They have questions, they have debates about what are we going to cut. I come and say no cuts to Medicaid, no cuts to Social Security, no cuts to housing, no cuts to education. These are programs that people live and die on. What we need to do is we need to fight to more fully equitably fund them. In my formal capacity as a state senator, there's not anything I can do legislatively that directly affects Social Security. What I can do is use my platform though, and the position I have to be outspoken on that. And we need to push our federal. Yeah, and that's, you're exactly right, and it's something I've been outspoken on and pushing our federal representatives to take a more ambitious approach to the issue. I think I saw, yes?
Is it possible to, the way the states did during COVID, to add unemployment insurance to affect our federal immigration enforcement?
Oh, that's a... Yes. First, can everybody here hear me, or folks, can you hear me at least? Is there anyone that cannot hear me? Okay. So I'm just going to try as best I can to repeat the questions that are asked. They were asking for folks who have been affected by immigration enforcement activities, can we basically have like a safety net program for those folks, right? Essentially is what you're asking. I think so. I think now what's happened with Operation Midway Blitz and the ICE raids is unprecedented in our lifetime. And so this is the time where we should be thinking much more big picture about creating new programs that can protect us, that can make sure that federal agencies are not weaponized against its people, right? Just all of these basic questions around the Constitution and our access to privacy, our ability to live in a sovereign society and not just have people come rounding us up and things like that, should be the justifications for creating programs that look like the New Deal, where we better serve our immigrant neighbors who oftentimes are running businesses in our communities. They're our parents, our neighbors. They are working in our community-based organizations. I think about my dad. I think about my uncle who is an Ethiopian immigrant who is afraid to leave the apartment without his passport right now. I think we can do better than that. And I think this is, because this crisis has happened, it's the time for us to reimagine a lot of our safety net. And what we have is a lot of politicians who are talking about cutting programs, and I think it's just like a bad nightmare from the 80s. It was like, I'm not interested in this. We can't be cutting programs right now that are the last line of the social safety net before people end up on the streets, or people end up without health care, with undiagnosed conditions, dying 10, 20, 30 years earlier than life expectancy. I just can't accept that. And so I'm with you on that, and I think we need more elected officials to step up in this moment right now. Yes?
Senator, many of us are worried about election integrity this year.
Yeah.
November. Are folks within this Illinois legislature trying to think about how to proactively protect our election through some sort of legislative efforts that we would have control of here in our state?
Yes. Excellent question. So the question was, are any of Illinois election authorities proactively thinking of ways to protect our polling places during the next election, which is on March 17th? The answer is yes. I'm proud to share with you that I actually was just reading a news story today that the Cook County Clerk's Office under Monica Gordon is taking a proactive, and her words, proactive, not reactive approach to this, where they plan to have staff, they plan to have uniformed folks and extra election judges, extra personnel, not just on election day on March 17th, but in the 4 or 5 days before that, where early voting is happening, to protect people's right to the ballot. That's a fundamental pillar of our democracy. We must protect it assiduously, make sure that people never feel unsafe and like they can't vote. And I was really encouraged to see that the Clerk Gordon has already put this plan into place. I have also spoken up to our election authorities and said that this is something I want us to be thinking proactively about and not worrying about why we didn't do this on March 17th. And our counterparts, it's a different story with them, but our state and county and city election authorities seem to be on the ball with this. Yes?
As you may know, there were 2 people that were shot by ICE during Operation Midway Blitz here in the Chicago area. One was Silvero Villegas Gonzalez, and one was Marimar Martinez.
Yeah.
Obviously there hasn't really been any accountability for those shootings. And I'm wondering if you might be open to calling on the state's attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke, to prosecute people that were responsible for that. A couple of your colleagues have already done so, Lillian Jimenez in the state House, Graciela Guzman, who I believe is senator, and Alderwoman Jessie Fuentes, or Alderperson Jessie Fuentes as well. So just wanted to ask if that's something you want to do.
Absolutely. The answer is yes. I absolutely would do that. I'm gonna chat with the staff afterwards to see if there's something floating out there that we can jump on. But no, we absolutely should prosecute ICE agents that participated in Operation Midway Blitz. Again, I'm really proud to have helped pass legislation in November, the Bivens Act, which gives us, everybody in here, the right to bring a lawsuit against an ICE agent for violating constitutional rights of us and our neighbors. But I would absolutely call on Eileen O'Neill Burke as the state's attorney for Cook County to up the ante on this. And I've been proud that Attorney General for Illinois, Kwame Raoul, has done this. He's been working with Keith Ellison, who's the AG of Minnesota, the AG of North Carolina, and other states that have been hit by the ICE raids. We know that this is a traveling ban, right, that was here, and they were in North Carolina, and they were in New Orleans, and now they're in Minneapolis and other places. And I am encouraged that the AGs of those states are working together to prosecute those ICE agents, or at least bring lawsuits against the federal government for what happened. Yeah, Phil.
So back to, well, thanks. Yeah, might as well. So back to election type questions. And I hate to put more on your plate. It sounds like you already have a lot. But do you have any plans, or is anyone working on potentially adding ranked choice voting statewide for all elections? Because there are, like, coming up on, it's probably too late for primaries right now, but there's some really great choices in really crowded races that we're having in a lot of different districts.